Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the IHI Call Days, calls 6 and 7. My name is Sergio, and today I'm going to be moderating this session. Today's session, it's about improving clinical management disease from, I cannot see the whole title. Improving clinical management of heart disease from early detection to treatment. Before we start, I would like to inform you that we are recording this session, and the recording will be published on the IHI website and the B2Match platform. We will also publish the presentation slides, and the call will be officially launched the next week, and all links and details how to apply will be published on the IHI website and the funding and tenders portal. Today, I have with me Clea Salpeia, who is a scientific officer at IHI. So without further ado, please, Clea, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sergio. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. What our webinar today will cover is an introduction to the IHI program and also specific information on this core topic. I'll describe the challenge, the need for public-private collaborative research, what is the scope of this topic, the expected outcomes and impacts, and some information on budget. I will also talk about the proposal submission and evaluation of the applications and give you some tips for preparing your application. What we will not cover in today's webinar is the rules and procedures. There will be a dedicated webinar tomorrow at the same time on this topic. And I will not also cover the financial aspects of the application. There is, again, a dedicated webinar on Friday on this topic. These webinars, including ours today, are all recorded and will be available on our website afterwards. So on our program, the Innovative Health Initiative program, the Innovative Health Initiative is an EU partnership in health. And in this partnership, we have on the public side, the European Union represented by the European Commission. And on the private side, we have the healthcare industry associations representing different sectors of the health industry. We have COSIR representing the medical imaging, radiotherapy, health ICT, electromedical industries. We have FPIA, including Vaccines Europe, that represent the pharmaceutical and vaccine industries. We have Europa Bio, that represents the biotechnology industry, and MedTech Europe, representing the medical technology industry. The general objectives of our program are the following. First, our aim is to turn health and research and innovation into real benefits for patients and society. Secondly, is to deliver safe, effective health innovations that cover the entire spectrum of care, from prevention to diagnosis and treatment, and particularly in areas where there is an unmet public health need. And thirdly, is to enhance the competitiveness of Europe's health industry. Our program is based on our strategic research and innovation agenda. The focus of our strategic research and innovation agenda are the cross-sectoral approaches that can facilitate the creation of new products and services for prevention, interception, diagnosis, treatment, and management of diseases. The overall goal is to lay foundations for development of safer and more effective healthcare products or solutions that respond to unmet public health needs. You can find the whole document, our research and innovation agenda, in this link at the bottom of the slide. Please keep in mind that the research supported by IHI should always remain at the pre-competitive level. So what are the projects that are funded under IHI? Our projects are created by open and competitive calls for proposals, and they are projects realized by cross-sectorial public-private partnerships. These cross-sectorial public-private partnerships leverage contributions from the industrial partners, from the IHI industry associations, which I listed earlier. If relevant, the project can have contributions from contributing partners. Keep in mind here that for contributing partners to participate in a project, they need to apply and be approved by our governing board. And thirdly, these partnerships leverage the contributions from public partners that are funded by the European Commission and the Horizon Europe program. How does IHI work? Here in specific, I will talk about the single stage procedure because the call 7 and our topic is a single stage call. So in this case, we have the call launch that will happen next week for call 7. Then we have the submission of proposals from applicant consortia. The applicant consortia have already been formed, and they include private partners or in some cases contributing partners, and they also include academics, SMEs, healthcare professionals, patient organizations, and regulators or HTA bodies. So these consortia submit their applications, and these applications undergo a competitive evaluation. From this competitive evaluation, the projects to be funded are selected, and these consortia are invited to a grant preparation procedure. At the end, we have the grant agreement signature and the launch of the new project. Next slide. Now let's look in specific on this call topic, the improving clinical management of heart disease from early detection to treatment. First, I will talk about the challenge that we're trying to address with this topic. So what is the challenge? Heart diseases, and by heart diseases, I mean structural heart disease or coronary artery disease, heart failure or heart arrhythmias, are causing a very high burden in Europe and worldwide. And their prevalence is even expected to rise in the coming years because of the aging of the population and the lifestyles of the European citizens. So while the problem is very big, the disease management and the long-term outcomes remain heterogeneous, which means in many cases are poor. And this is due to lack of comprehensive access to detection, diagnosis, and care. So what do we need? We need faster diagnosis and personalized treatments for these patients. And that can be achieved by better integration of the different steps of care from primary to hospital care, so that we achieve an optimized disease management in more efficient healthcare care settings. So this is the challenge we're trying to address with this topic. Why do we need a public-private cross-sectoral collaboration for that? There is a need for such a public-private cross-sectoral collaboration because of the complexity of clinical care for heart disease. And to address this challenge, we need to bring together different players in the field. We need industrial partners that are involved in the diagnosis, the data analytics, clinical decision-making, are involved in pharmaceutical interventions or non-pharmaceutical interventions for heart disease on one side. And we need also public partners like researchers, hospitals, healthcare professionals, patients, and patient organizations. And the lists are not exhaustive. So with these public-private partnerships, we aim to bring together the expertise that is needed to address this challenge, different types of resources, and leverage the expertise and resources from both sides. Next slide. Just 1 second. I'm sorry for this small interruption. We had a technical issue. So we're moving on the scope of the topic. So overall, the aim that is of this topic is to address the need to optimize heart disease management in more efficient healthcare settings. So applicants to this topic may identify and address only some critical aspects of the patient journey or specific care settings, with the aim of contributing to the overall care pathway improvement. Also, applicants should address all or any of the following diseases: structural heart disease, coronary artery disease, heart failure, and heart arrhythmias. Let's move on now to the next slide to look at specifically at the objectives of this topic. So first is to optimize the patient pathway and the transition among the teams from one to the other care setting, meaning from primary care to ambulatory or hospital care. Secondly, is to improve patient outcomes through earlier detection, better diagnosis, monitoring, and or treatment of disease. And how? By deploying or developing new technologies, example given personalized imaging technologies, these personalized sensing technologies, or AI-powered clinical decision tools. Thirdly, is to develop and implement measures and digital tools to enhance efficiency and optimize outcomes in primary and hospital care, for example, reducing hospitalizations or the length of stay, and to guide patients faster to the selection of the best treatment modality. For example, that can be achieved by procedural automation or non-invasive testing or improving access to data. Fourth objective is to develop personalized patient-centric solutions in diagnosis and treatment, considering specific populations' needs. For example, children or elderly patients, or cardio-oncology patients, or patients with comorbidities. Fifth objective is to consider in all the solutions that we propose the sustainability and scalability of them. And moving on with the objectives, sixth one is to explore management strategies for combining access to medical teams specializing in heart disease and to social interventions at the same time in order to address population inequalities in outcomes. When exploring such management strategies, you need to consider also the heterogeneity of the healthcare system in Europe and generate evidence that are applicable across a diversity of European realities. Seventh objective is to conduct an initial health economic study of the proposed interventions on healthcare system. Such study can be an analysis on whether an optimized management of heart disease results in avoiding or reducing hospital treatment and the related costs. Eighth objective is that in the project that you design, you need to engage patients and healthcare professionals from its conceptualization throughout its implementation. For example, patients and healthcare professionals should be engaged in raising public awareness, in educating patients, in helping with the improvement of the referral pathway and the pathway to treatment, and developing targeted training for relevant clinical staff. Last objective is to consider the potential regulatory impact of the results and develop a regulatory strategy for generating appropriate evidence, engaging with regulators in a timely manner. So these are the objectives. Let's look at what are the expected outcomes of projects that will be funded under this topic. So from projects funded under this topic, we expect that healthcare systems and patients will benefit from the development of integrated solutions for improving critical aspects in the care pathway for heart disease. Also, healthcare systems and also patients will benefit from development or optimization of innovative technologies leading to personalized patient-centric solutions for early detection, diagnosis, and treatment for heart disease. Also, patients will benefit from strategies tailored to their needs for improved outcomes in heart disease. And finally, healthcare professionals will benefit from deployment of solutions for improved diagnostic procedures, referral programs, and clinical workflows, as well as targeted training for the relevant clinical staff. Concerning the expected impacts that are expected after the completion of the project, these are for patients, personalized patient-centered healthcare, improved patient outcomes, and experience throughout the continuum of care for heart disease. For healthcare professionals, these are novel diagnostic procedures and optimized clinical workflows. Also enhancement of existing clinical management guidelines and the development of new ones as appropriate. For healthcare systems, the benefits will be organizational solutions and an efficient transition through the different stages along the whole continuum of care for heart disease. And finally, companies will develop and offer advanced, robust, and scalable solutions that leverage innovative technologies, tools, and services, allowing integration with other existing already workflows. So these are the expected outcomes and impacts of projects funded under this topic. When you're preparing your application, it is also important to remember that dissemination, exploitation, and communication of results is very important in IHI. So you need to reserve a budget for effective dissemination, exploitation, and communication. Also in your application, remember to describe the dissemination, exploitation, and communication measures that you plan and the specific target groups that these will be addressed. In particular, encourage the uptake of the results of the project through a strong communication and outreach plan. Allocate appropriate resources to explore synergies with other relevant projects and initiatives in the same field. And finally, in this topic, we have the 3A provisions applying: availability, accessibility, and affordability of the results. So you need to include elements in your dissemination, exploitation, and communication plan that address these provisions. Now, let's look at the budget for this call. So the total available IHI budget for this topic is 25 million euros. What does this mean? For IHI, we believe to address the objectives of this topic, a project needs an IHI financial contribution of 12.5 million euros. This doesn't exclude a different contribution. But this contribution, the IHI contribution, should be matched by contribution from partners of the consortium, industry partners, and possibly contributing partners. That they should contribute another 12.5 million euros. The eligibility criterion is 45%, not 50%, but our guidance is to aim at 50%. But the eligibility criterion, of course, is 45% coming from the private and contributing partners. So the project budget, the total eligibility costs are approximately estimating in 25 million euros. I will try to give you an example of a budget of a proposal. To remind you at this stage that on Friday there will be a dedicated webinar explaining the financial aspects of the proposal. So if you have any questions, it's very good to follow this webinar on Friday. So here, this example doesn't follow exactly the budget that we have estimated for this for the projects of this topic, because here we have a total 25 million euros. The example here has 40 million euros as budget proposed as a project budget. So in this case, where we have 40 million euros, you see that 20 million euros come from the public funding, the IHI financial contribution, and 20 million euros come from the contributions of the partners of the consortium. Now, the breakdown here that you see are the different possibilities that you can have, because in single stage calls, eligible for funding is any legal entity established in a member state or associated country or low and middle income countries. So you can have hybrid also private members. But all these details, I prefer to leave it for the webinar on Friday and try to have your questions asked at that time. So now let's move to the proposal submission and evaluation. To submit a proposal, you need to download all the templates. We have part A of the proposal, which has all the administrative data, and this is filled in web forms at the funding and tenders portal. Then we have a part B of the proposal, which is the narrative part, and includes 3 sections: the excellence, impact, quality, and efficiency of the implementation. These parts also follow the categories of the criteria for the evaluation. So read the instructions of the template very carefully. It is important to write a good application. And we also have annexes, an annex that describes the types of participant, an annex for the details of the budget, and we have annexes for clinical studies template. You can prepare your application, and then you can update the information in the submission system anytime before the final submission. Now let's look at the evaluation criteria, which are the criteria according to which we evaluate the applications that we receive. As I said, these criteria follow the 3 parts of the part B of your application. So first is excellence. And in excellence, we have 2 sub-criterion: clarity and pertinence of the project's objectives, and the extent to which the proposed work is ambitious and goes beyond the state of the art. Second sub-criterion is the soundness of the proposed methodology, including the underlying concepts, models, assumptions, interdisciplinary approaches. Appropriate consideration should be given to the gender dimension in research and innovation, the quality of open science practices, including sharing and management of research outputs. Now, the second part is impact. And again, here we have 2 sub-criteria. First, the sub-criterion is the credibility of the pathways to achieve the expected outcomes and impacts, as these are described in the topic text. And second sub-criterion is the suitability and quality of the measures to maximize the expected outcomes and impacts, as these are described in the topic text. And finally, the third part of the evaluation is the quality and efficiency of the implementation. And here, for this evaluation criterion, we have 3 sub-criteria. The first is the quality and effectiveness of the work plan, assessment of risks, and appropriateness of the effort assigned to work packages and the resources overall. Second is the capacity and role of each participant and the extent to which the consortium as a whole brings together the necessary expertise to address the objectives of the topic text. And third is if the integration of in-kind and financial contribution is clearly defined, including those coming from private partners or their constituent or affiliated entities. So these are all the evaluation criteria. Let's move now to some tips for you when you prepare your application. So the first and most important tip is to read well all the relevant material that is available on our website. The topic text first and foremost, and also the guide for applicants. The topic text now is published in this first link that you can see in the slide, but next week when the call will be launched, you will be able to find the topic text in this second link where we have our open calls. Another very important advice is to start efforts to form your consortium, and you need to start early because that takes most of the time. When you try to put together a consortium, a partnership, think that in IHI we're looking for public-private partnerships and include partners that bring this in-kind contribution that you need for your application. Also, it is important to ensure that all the information that we request in the call text and the proposal template is provided. The better the better you address what is requested in the call text, the more chances you have that the expert will evaluate this proposal as better. And finally, don't forget to consider a plan for potential regulatory impact of your results. As I said, one of the most important tips is to start forming your consortium early. So to help you with this, which is a very complicated activity, we have from our side these info days where you can also use our B2Mats platform, but you can also use your national contact point for IHI and also the social media. Following this webinar, we have pitching sessions today. Not today, I'm sorry, on the 23rd and the 24th of January, as you can see here. So if you wanted to have a pitch session, indicate this in your profile by 12th of January. Now, for explaining the B2Match platform that we have prepared, I'll pass the floor to my colleague Sergio. And thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions at the end of the webinar, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Clelia, and thank you for a very clear presentation of the topic one, call 7. So as my colleague was saying now, I really encourage you to join the call 7 pitching sessions that will take place the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Every day it's at 2:30. So yes, add it to your agenda. It's really easy. Go to your profile in the B2Max platform, and you can just in the agenda section add it to your calendar, and it will show it. So now it's time for questions. So please go ahead, write your questions in the chat. I see that we have already quite a few of them. And we would like to start with the one done by English European. So this would be actually addressed to, I think, our Desmond Barry, who is with us today. So Desmond, if you could turn on your camera, I'm going to invite you now to unmute yourself. Very good. Well, Desmond is here with us. Thank you for joining us, Desmond. All right. So the first question, if we could roll up. Well, it was from Dimitri. What is the difference between private partners and contributing partners?
Okay, so that's actually a good question to start with. So essentially, when we talk about private partners, we primarily talk about those entities that are one of the private members of the IHI joint undertaking. So as Clelia mentioned right at the start, we have these private members that are laid down in their legislation as FPA, COSIR, Europa, etc. They basically, they constitute half of the actual joint undertaking and are quite large trade associations in themselves, and will have a lot of what we call constituent and affiliated entities. So just by way of example, if you take FPA, which is the pharmaceutical organization, then you will have an awful lot of companies that are constituent and affiliated entities of FPA, and that's so the term private member refers to those 4 trade associations, but private partners, then we kind of expand to refer to both the private members and their constituent and affiliated entities. It's a shorthand, which cuts down on the very large and long sentences and qualifications we'd have to use otherwise. They're different from a contributing partner because, by definition, a contributing partner is not either one of the private members or one of the constituent or affiliated entities. But a contributing partner joins, they basically apply to become a contributing partner to IHI. And in that way, then, if they're accepted, they're allowed to contribute in kind to IHI projects, and that they get other benefits as well. So the private partners and the contributing partners are similar in that they both contribute in kind to projects. However, they're different in the case that, you know, if you can automatically be a private partner, but you cannot automatically be a contributing partner, because, as I said, the contributing partner applies to the IHI governing board and says, look, this is who we are, and we want to basically become involved in an IHI project, and we want to contribute X amount of in kind, and this is our plans for the project itself. So if you are contemplating either becoming a contributing partner or looking into this in more detail, I'd refer you to we have a dedicated section on the IHI website, which basically covers contributing partners. We have a dedicated guide now, which we've actually prepared, which one of our legal team, Caroline, has done a lot of work on, which lays out exactly what a contributing partner is, how you apply, what the benefits are, and there are template application letters as well. So everything that someone needs to either learn more about contributing partners or indeed to become a contributing partner is there, available on the website, and it's ready to go.
Thank you very much, Desmond. If you could mute yourself now, because we are having yes, we're having issues with the audio. So thank you all of you for flagging this up. We just mute the rest of the microphones, so hopefully that solved the problem. If not, again, please let us know via the chat. So next question was from, again, Dimitri. How many members should be in a consortia?
I think that the best
Sorry, Desmond, it's muted, so I'm going to request him to unmute himself now.
Okay. So sorry. It's amazing how the lawyers always get muted, isn't it? But basically, to answer Dimitri's question, there's no ideal number of members in an actual consortium. So the recommendation that we make is, look, your consortium composition should be sufficient and should have sufficient entities to address the challenges in the project and to do what you're planning to do. That said, there are a couple of essential components. There's a minimum size. So you need at least, we'll call it 3. You basically need one entity that's established in the member state, and you need 2 more legal entities that are either established in the member state or associated countries. They're the 14 or 15 associated countries to the Horizon Europe project. So that's the absolute small size, but it would be very unusual to see a consortium that's that size. Obviously, usually we would see consortium with more legal entities. And the second point is, in the single stage call, as we all know, and as Claudia's referred to, you're expected to basically bring this 45 or 50% of in kind, and you would need legal entities who would be able to supply that as well. So in both cases, it's envisaged that you would basically have a larger number than 3. That said, I must emphasize that we will not look at a consortium which has an awful lot of members or a smaller number of members and basically judge it and say, well, that's not an appropriate size. So it is completely within the power and the decision making of the consortium itself to decide who they need to address the challenges, who's going to bring in kind, and that can then be laid out in the proposal.
May I complement here that what Desmond very well described is as far as the eligibility of an application. But keep in mind that the composition of your consortium also is evaluated by the experts during the evaluation. So your consortium should be a pro-sectorial public-private partnership, bringing all the expertise that is needed to address the objectives of the topic. So keep that also in mind. It's not also only what is in the eligibility criteria needed, but the composition of the consortium is a part of the evaluation.
Thank you both for the clarifications. Next question will be, is it possible to apply to participate in a clinical trial?
I'm not sure, if I understand correctly the question. If the question is whether we can have clinical trials in an IHI project, is yes. Now, whether one clinical trial is addressing all the objectives of this topic is for you to think and answer. So we can have clinical trials in IHI project, but the application that you put together, your proposal, should address all the objectives of the topic text.
All right, we move on to the next question by Steve. What is the difference between private partners and SMEs?
So going back to the answer on private members and contributing partners. So I think, as we said, that the private partners generally um, are automatically known. They already know whether they are in some way linked to one of the four private members, the trade associations. But we should note here that an SME, by definition, could also be a private member or sorry, a private partner, because they would be linked to one of the private members. So just by way of example, as an Irish person, there could be an SME in Dublin in Ireland who basically is associated to the National Association of Ireland for example, pharmaceuticals or imaging, and they are then in turn linked to either COSI or FP or whatever. So what I would urge is, if you are an SME, very first thing you do is you basically just check in, confirm your status as to whether you are indeed somehow associated with one of the trade associations. It's not going to affect your participation in any way, but then it'll be clear kind of what your status is. And whether you are an SME who's totally unconnected, or whether you're somehow connected with one of the trade associations, and that will inform you going forward in terms of whether you're going to apply for funding, etc.
Thank you so much for that, Desmond. Another question, can the project be lower than 25 million euro?
I mean, yeah, I mean that is very much as Kaleli referenced. It's a recommended. It's basically it's a figure which IHI has selected, and which basically says, look, given the challenges that are laid out in the call topic, this is the amount that we think would be applicable. But it is conceivable, and this happens, that we frequently receive proposals with a different amount, either lower or higher. But also, as Clelia said, your proposal will be evaluated by the experts, and they're going to basically say, look, these are the challenges laid down in the topic text. How is the proposal going to address them? And that will be taken into account. I think what we would stress is, if you're going to come in substantially under that figure, I think it will need to be clear as to, even with the reduced budget, are you still hitting all the objectives as laid out in the call topic text?
Exactly. This is what I would also say, that I mean, you can have variations of the budget. It's not obligatory to be at 25 million euros, but your project need to be ambitious and need to be able to, bring the expected outcomes from this topic. So yes, in IHI we estimated that about that budget is enough to address the objectives of the project. We can have variations, but the project needs to be ambitious enough for for addressing our program.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for complementing the answer, Clea. So next question is, how can we contact the contributing partners?
Am I muted or?
Yes, you are.
So maybe what I should clarify is that there is not a pool of contributing partners out there that potential applicants have to, reach out to. Anybody potentially could be a contributing partner, and we're always accepting applications for new contributing partners. I think the key components for the contributing partner is that A, they are in a position to bring in kind, which is useful for the project, and B, as I referenced in the first answer, they are not in any way a constituent or affiliated entity of one of IHI's private members. So what we've seen in the IHI single stage calls is that we have the consortia who are self-organizing, and these consortia are basically identifying legal entities or companies or whoever that they know. And some of these companies or legal entities are then saying, well, we have in kind, we can contribute, we will apply to IHI, we will become a contributing partner. and then we will be in a position to supply the in-kind if we are actually accepted. So I would very much stress that if you are contemplating, applying for an IHI call, and you're thinking about this in-kind, which is required, A, start early, and B, start looking around, looking into your contacts, looking at the entities that you think will compose your consortium, and see who's in a position to actually serve the role of contributing partner and bring in kind. That said, we also have, as I said, a large number of contributing partners already who may be prepared to also come on board with your individual proposal. There's existing IHI projects running at the moment, so I think both Macaulay and I would say networking is useful here. To reach out with your contacts to find out who's involved or who's interested in becoming involved, and that might give you access to IHI contributing partners as well.
Thank you very much. Gabriela is asking, the proposal has to address all objectives?
Yes, in your application, you need to address all the objectives of the topic text. Where you allow for there is variation is that applicants may identify and address some critical aspects of the patient's journey or specific care settings with the aim of contributing to the overall care pathway improvement. And also, as far as the heart diseases are concerned, applicants could address all of heart diseases included here or any of those. And to remind, with heart diseases here, we include structural heart disease, coronary artery disease, heart failure, and heart arrhythmias. So you can in your application address all of them or any, depending on what you have in mind to propose.
Very good. So next question from Victoria. Can you provide more details on the heart diseases of interest?
Yes, I'll repeat what I said in the previous question. Here, the heart diseases that are included is structural heart disease, coronary heart disease, heart failure, and heart arrhythmias.
While you're at it, what is the difference between industry partners and contributing partners as mentioned in the budget slide?
So again, I think this is kind of identical to the first answer that we actually addressed, or question we addressed. So contributing partners, self-organizing, they apply to IHI, they contribute in kind. And then industry partners is another term that is used synonymously with private partners or private members. It's basically someone that's coming from industry, who's generally associated or constituent entity of the four IHI private members, the trade associations, FPA, COSIR, Europa Bio, MedTech.
Okay, next question from Marta. Recently, we, an academic institution, were asked several times to participate as contributing partners and not only as beneficiaries. Has anything changed and we are going to always be required to provide ECOP?
Yeah, so this is interesting. All right, let me just to clarify the terms we're talking about. When you talk about beneficiaries, I think what you mean is someone who is receiving funding, because under the terms of the grant agreement, a contributing partner who's just contributing in kind would also be classified as a beneficiary. But for the purposes of the question, let's assume you're talking about someone who's just receiving funding. The simple answer I can give you is that if you're an academic institution, and because this is a single stage call, you are eligible to receive funding as long as you're coming from, an EU member state or associated country. So there's no obligation on you to become a contributing partner and just contribute in kind. So really, it should be what suits your institution. So what I would say is, if you are a contributing partner in other IHI projects, great, thank you. You're very welcome, of course, as a contributing partner, but you also have the freedom to just apply in the present call and participate in projects they're under as a beneficiary and that is receiving funding and you don't have to bring in kind. And obviously, whatever suits you best within the context of either your proposed consortium and how you want to interact with the project. So no, just because you are a CP in other IHI projects doesn't mean that you can just come in as a beneficiary receiving funding in other IHI projects. So we have a lot of flexibility in that regard. But please note, just make sure that the consortium knows early at the proposal stage what your actual interaction is planned to be, and then that will obviously then inform the proposal submission, the proposed budget, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you very much. Next question will be, how many projects do you expect to fund within this call?
Well, yes, as I showed in the budget info slide, the budget that we have for this call is 25 million euros. We expect that an IHI contribution, financial contribution for each program, for each project of 12.5 million euros is appropriate to address all the objectives. So we expect to fund more than one project. Now, whether this is 2, 3, or 1, it depends on the quality of the proposals that we receive and the budget that the top rank proposals request for. So, but there is budget for more than one project normally.
Thank you, Clelia. So next question will be, could you please further explain the funding rate and reimbursed eligible costs showed in the simplified budget example?
Can we have the slide up again? So it just. Yes, this is the one, yes. So, I mean, here, this is the first column that probably you refer. I mean, the funding rate is 100% for all partners that receive public funds. So total eligible costs are 100% funded. Now, I don't know what the question to which figure it refers more. You can have public partners, as we described, contributing. This is an example. It doesn't have to be 15 million or 10 is just an example. You should have also private and contributing partners contributing the other 50%, matching the contribution of the IHI. And you can have private and contributing partners that are contributing ICOP or IKA or financial contribution, but they also receive funding. These are the hybrid partners. But for more details and more questions and clarifications, you can follow the webinar that we have on Friday at the same time on the financial aspects of the proposal.
Thank you very much for explaining this further. So next question will be, can organizations, specifically academia from associated countries, participate without any financial contribution?
So if you're coming from, and let's be clear, a country which is associated to the Horizon Europe program, and as I said earlier on, there's 14 or 15 of them, then you're eligible for funding, and there's no requirement on you to bring in kind. So it's not a difficulty. What I would do is again just ensure that indeed you are coming from what's considered an associated country, and this will be dealt with in the financial webinar. It'll be dealt with in the rules and procedures webinar, which we're hosting tomorrow. And the list is also available online because it's recently changed because we have some new additions. I think we have Montenegro and Canada are coming in. So so just satisfy yourself that indeed your legal entity is established in an associated country in terms of the Horizon Europe regulation, associated country, and then there's not a problem.
Thank you very much for that. So the next question will be from Massimiliano. For the in-kind contributions, what is the role of the IHI industrial partners? Are there some differences with the former IMI?
Okay. Yeah. Well, yes. I think we could say, to put it succinctly, I think what we could say is that 2 points. One, I mean, as is clear, if you were familiar with IMI, then you know that we only ever did what was called a two-stage call. And in the two-stage call, we had what was known as a pre-identified industry consortium that was basically drawn from industry and what are now called the contributing partners, and they contributed the in-kind. This is very differently because this is a single stage call, and in the single stage call, there's no pre-identified industry consortium, and basically the in-kind is coming from the consortium itself, the applicant consortium. So obviously that's a very big difference. I think then in terms of the funding as well, that the funding rules are different. So if you are familiar with IMI2, I would very much strongly recommend you take a look at there, and I'll make this recommendation to anyone who's actually on the call to look at our guide for applicants, which is also on the website. I think it's co-located with the call topic texts, and we basically go into this in quite a bit of detail and say, look, this is exactly the structure of the call. This is actually how it's going to work. We explain the 50% or the 45% in-kind contribution. We explain the differences between private members and public partners and contributing partners, and it's a very, very good way of kind of, if you knew IMI2 in the past and you want to be more familiar with IHI, then that's a great introduction. And then in terms of the in-kind contributions itself, I think my answer there pretty much sums it up. Under IMI2, the applicant consortia were not responsible for bringing any in-kind at all, whereas now under IHI, we have this very, very strict minimum requirement of 45% in kind from the consortium. As Calelia said, however, 50% really is recommended because things change during the kind of the process where you get to grant agreement signature. So we advise that everyone has that safety margin, and it is the responsibility of the consortium to find this in kind, whether it's coming from companies, whether it's coming from contributing partners, whoever it's coming from.
Thank you very much, Desmond. So the next question comes from Pavel. Being a startup seeking a consortium, what is the best way to seek out a consortium and to propose our contribution to the project?
Well, what I could suggest is to use our B2Mats platform, where you can see the list of other entities that are interested in the call and contact them to arrange meetings. But also you can apply to have a pitching session where you can present what you can bring in consortium for this call, and then try to network.
Very good. Thank you so much, Clelia, for your response. So the next question is, what is the schedule for the submission? Nice question. Who wants to take it?
The call will be officially published next week, and you can see all our timelines by end of next week will be available on our website. The submission will be around May, around mid-May, but for the specific date, please access our website next week.
Fantastic. So next question, which kind of organization is expected to assume the coordination of the project?
There's some flexibility here. I think the key point is a coordinator has, under the IHI grant agreement, quite specific responsibilities in relation to handling, for example, finances, handling the funding, channeling the funding to the rest of the actual project, assuming what we considered a leadership role in some aspects, liaising with IHI. So the main parameters we have is that by definition, the coordinator has to be a beneficiary in the actual project. So, that would rule out what we would call an associated partner. But that's generally not a difficulty for any consortia. The second point is that the beneficiary, really has to have the resources available to handle what could be considered a large and complex project. So we would just ask those who are considering being coordinators to ensure before start that they have the resources available, and a bit of experience is helpful, but there's always first-time coordinators as well. But just make sure that you're, look at the lifetime of the actual project, how long this is going to run, and say, can you make that sort of resource FTE work commitment for the lifetime of the project and actually the run up to it and for a few months afterwards as well. But beyond that, I'd refer you to, again, the IHI Guide for Applicants, which has some information in there on the coordinator, and also the Model Grant Agreement. There's a section in there which talks about the obligations of the coordinator as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Desmond, for your response. So next question is from Raquel. Can a public partner bring in-kind?
I think we had this in my first answer. So under the IHI rules, we only have two types of entities that can basically bring in kind. One is, let's call it the private members and their constituent and affiliated entities. So, if you're affiliated or a constituent entity of FPA, if you're a pharmaceutical company or whatever, you can bring in kind. Also, the other entities we said, or the other type that we said, is a contributing partner. So contributing partner, as I said earlier, is someone who applies to the IHI governing board and says, look, I want to be a contributing partner. This is the in-kind that I'm actually bringing to the project. This is why it's relevant. The governing board makes a decision, and then you're allowed to become a contributing partner and you're allowed to contribute in kind. So if you are, for instance, an academic institution and you are coming into the project and you're going to do very important work, but you're not going to, and you'll receive funding, but you're not going to become a contributing partner, then no, you cannot contribute in kind. Now, just because it was on the table that we were looking at for a few minutes, that was up on the page, I'll just mention it now because I think I saw a question that may be coming in a few minutes. We also have what we call, I clearly refer to this hybrid model, where you can basically have someone who is both receiving contributing in kind and also receiving funding, but they wouldn't be public partners. They would generally be contributing partners or industry members.
Thank you very much, Desmond. Next question will be from Steve. For the clinical validation part in the project, has this to be written as a strategy plan, or do we have all clinical trials already? For example, if you make 4 products, do you need to write for all 4 products already the clinical validation trial? Clea?
It depends on whether the clinical trial will be part of the project and will happen in the lifetime of the project or afterwards. I mean, if the clinical trial is included in the lifetime of the project, then we also have an annex where you need to describe the clinical study. But if there is a smaller first clinical study for validation and then that's followed by a clinical trial after, or not in the frame of the project, this doesn't need to be described in detail. If you have this smaller clinical study that will be included in the project, should be described, and there is a dedicated annex for that. If this is not in the frame of the project and it's something that will follow, then you don't have to describe it in detail. I hope that answers the question. If you need any clarification, please type in the questions chat box.
Thank you very much, Clelia. Next question comes from Raquel. Do you recommend to have a consulting company as a partner or coordinator of the project?
Yeah, so we're not going to make a recommendation one way or another in relation to that. I think it's known that some consortia choose to use one of these management companies, the best thing I can say is that this would be evaluated by the experts at the proposal stage. It goes to things like the size of the project and the complexity of the actual project, and is it is the is the engagement of one of these companies providing a suitable return? So on the amount of money that's going to be spent on using them. So IHI Program Office does not take a position on it. It's at the discretion of the consortium as to whether they want to use it or not, but it will have to be clearly laid out as to exactly what such a company is actually going to do. That's probably the best answer I can give.
Steve is asking, can partners from the USA join with in-kind?
So partners from the US are, of course, super welcome. Generally, if they're bringing in kind, because first things first, just I'm sure everyone knows, but just to draw the distinction, if you're coming from the US, you are not automatically eligible for funding because the US is not associated with the Horizon Europe project. But you can still come in to a consortium, and if you're coming from the US, and a very, very, very common way that we have of doing this is they just become contributing partners. And they basically say, look, we are organization X and we're coming from the US and we want to bring in kind to an actual project. And, under IMI, we had this a lot with people like the Simon Foundation and the Gates Foundation, and I think Michael J. Fox Foundation was going to be involved, but there was an issue with the legal parts. But this is extremely common. So if such a thing is being contemplated, what I would recommend is the best way to go is to basically contemplate becoming a contributing partner, look at the information that we have on the website, look at the CP guide that's available for download. The IHI legal team, because we understand that there's issues in relation to US federal law, and some US entities have concerns in relation to placing themselves under Belgian law because the project is governed by Belgian law. Just contact the IHI legal team, and Carolina, who's one of our lawyers, is deals with most of the CP queries and really knows the area very well, and she'd be happy to provide assistance on this. So I think the short answer to the question is yes, US entities can contribute in kind. We need to bring them in primarily as a contributing partner, but that is very doable. It's been done in the past and it's happening a lot under IHI, and there are ways that we can do it. One last point would be that in kind in these situations, if it's coming from the US, is classified as what we call non-EU in kind. There's a cap on that at the program level and sometimes at the project level, and that would need to be discussed with the consortium as well. But we can usually find a way.
Fantastic. Thank you, Desmond. Luis Correa is asking, can a partner be both a receiving partner and contribute in kind?
Yeah, I think we just answered that. So you can, if you're coming in this, because this is what's called a single stage call, and Kalelia mentioned it about 10 minutes ago when we had the finance slide. I think it was the third entry on the left-hand side, and we basically call this a hybrid model, whereby you could have a contributing partner who's coming in and has applied to the IHI governing board and saying, look, we're bringing X amount of in kind. This is our contribution to the project. You can also request funding as well. If you're contemplating such an approach, that equation should be expressed in the contributing partner application letter. You should state in the application letter that you will be requesting funding as well. But this is explained in the guide for contributing partners, which I referenced and which is available on the IHI website.
Next question will be from Michael. Is there an expected or typical project duration?
No, there is not an expected duration. Applicants can propose a duration that is matching their proposal and manages to address the objectives and the activities of the topic text in that duration.
Very good. Next question is from Raquel. Can the consortium be composed of different partners developing more than one product or solution? And in that case, can one product solution address some objectives and other product solution address other objectives? Or its product slash solution should address all objectives?
First, yes, one product or solution cannot address all objectives. Some objectives are to develop or deploy a product or a solution, and other objectives refer to exploring management strategies. So what you should keep in mind is that in your application, you should have a concise, not a concise, a comprehensive solution of how the whole pathway of care for heart disease can be improved. So if that solution overall that you propose includes two products or one product, that's up to you. It's just that in the end, you will have to propose something that can overall improve the pathway of care for heart disease. So that can refer to one or two products, or one product that refers to diagnostics, another product that has to do with the clinical decision making. I don't know, but in the end, these all have to come together, because our goal is to, in the end, to have a more efficient care settings that are integrated. So in your proposal, you need to bring all this together and propose a comprehensive solution.
Thank you, Clelia. Next question will be from David Bello. So can a small SME that is just starting in the business, but with very experienced founders, could be a coordinator and have a partner that deals with the financial side?
So I think that, yes, I think mechanically and technically it's conceivable. To go back to my earlier answer, actually two answers maybe. If there's a small SME, I think the first question that needs to be asked is, does it have the capacity to actually serve as in the coordinator role? Which, as I said, there are some strict responsibilities and rules attached to that, and these are laid out in the IHI grant agreement. That's the first part. But let's just say we have an SME and okay, they think they can actually do that. The second part then is the partner that deals with the financial side. I mean, by carving off the financial responsibilities, then and getting, I guess then we will be talking about one of these management entities that was the subject of another question to fulfill that role, then that is a structure that at least would be permissible. I think then we would basically say, well, if you're not doing the financial part, then, you know, let's make sure that the coordinator is doing other things. That I guess then you would have the coordinator doing more of the science role, which is an approach some projects take. What I would say is, in such a construction, you'd have to make sure that there would have to be very good liaison between the official coordinator and then the entity that's looking after the financial aspect, and whether the consortium which is built around that structure is happy with it and thinks it will actually work, and whether everyone feels that that's the best way to achieve the objectives. So I'm not going to say no. I think it is something that is technically feasible, but it would have to be demonstrated, particularly to the applicant consortium, that this is the most efficient way to organize and coordinate the project.
Thank you so much, Desmond. And questions keep coming to the chat. Next question comes from Steve. Can regulation like CE mark also be part of the project?
Yes, I wouldn't exclude that. I mean, we don't expect regulatory acceptance of what is proposed in the project. As we said, what we expect is to think of a regulatory strategy and interaction plan with the regulators. But in this case, regulation like CE mark could be part of the project. Yes.
Thank you, Clelia. Finally, I think this is almost the last question that we got in the chat. Question for Desmond. Who owns the IP that is generated within the IHI project? Could you elaborate on the IHI policy on this?
I won't elaborate on it because we have the rules and procedures webinar tomorrow, and I'm going to talk a lot about intellectual property tomorrow, but maybe a few bullet points just to address the question succinctly. The simple answer I can give you is that if a beneficiary in a project, in an IHI project, generates IP, then by definition, it is owned by the generating beneficiary. Now, that's subject to a couple of caveats. Caveat one would be we do have such a thing which is known as jointly generated results, whereby multiple entities can contribute, multiple beneficiaries can contribute towards the final result. And obviously then in those cases, we need what's called a joint ownership agreement to basically regulate how this co-generated asset is going to be handled. That's maybe caveat number one. And caveat number two is that, okay, you've generated a result in the actual project, you are the owner of it de facto, this is fine. But there are obligations in relation to this thing that you have generated in the actual project, in the sense that while you retain ownership, you still have a strict obligation under the grant agreement to grant access rights to the other entities in the project if they need it, so they can get their own work done in the project and possibly also conduct research use. So tomorrow, in the actual the rules and procedures webinar, we'll talk about a little bit about Article 16, which is in the actual grant agreement, which is the start of the intellectual property rules. And then maybe if we have time, we'll talk about Annex 5 as well of the grant agreement, which goes into more detail on the intellectual property rules as well. So if you can, and if this is a particular concern of yours, I would plug our rules and procedures webinar tomorrow, and you'll get more information. But I think the information just presented here, the key takeaway is if you build it in the project as a beneficiary, it's yours, subject to the caveats mentioned before.
Thank you very much, Desmond, for your response. So we're reaching the end of this webinar, but not before asking you to go to the marketplace where you can actually find project opportunities for Call 7 Topic 1. And you just have to go to your B2Match profile and go to the marketplace, and then click on project coordination. Select the topic of your interest, and there you will see other people's ideas for projects or requests for determined experience. Also, please remember to book your meetings via the B2Match platform in 4 easy steps. First, make yourself available, look for partners on the participants tab, select date, time, and attendees, and finally send the meeting request and wait for the reply. Thank you very much to everybody for attending today's info session on topic 1 of the Call 7. And I really want to thank you, Clelia and Desmond, for being here with us today and being so participative and explaining everything so well. We're going to be waiting for you for this afternoon webinar again for topic 2. And if you have questions, do not hesitate to send to us to infodesk@ihi.europa.eu. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.